we are going to start with the pledge of allegiance. Voice after 225. Why don't you come out for and lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
Flags there.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Sunshine Law, in accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment to streaming services and other online meeting platforms. This meeting is being held in person through the Zoom meeting platform, being broadcast by Centennial Hall, 25 Cedar Avenue, Cherry, New Jersey. Public participation in this regular council meeting of May 12, 2025 is available by calling the phone number or through web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until the time for questions and comments, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to question or comment by phone or through Zoom by the raise hand button will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of this meeting was included the scheduled meetings, which was adopted by resolution number 2025-13, sent to the Asbury Park Press, and on January 7, 2025, posted on the Borough website, or the Board of Municipal Building, and has been made continuously posted as required by the statute. Without notice having been given, the Borough Clerk is directed to approve the statement and minutes of this meeting. Allison, now, please have a roll call.
Council members Cole.
Yes.
Pimaselli.
Yes.
Hoey.
Yes.
Hotch.
Yes.
Barbara.
Present.
Olson.
Yes.
We have Administrator York, Attorney Sowell, Chief McGovern, CFO Britton, and Engineer Gordella as well.
I would like to take a moment before we start just to acknowledge that we are currently, it's Monday, May 12th, from May 11th to May 17th is National Police Week. And I really recognize that in the first council meeting we had here. I don't remember if that was the exact recognition.
Election?
Yeah, it was good. It's years ago.
At the same time, yeah.
2 years ago. So we just like to thank, obviously, we think we have the finest police department, not only in the entire state, but the entire country. So thank you for all you do with your entire team.
Thank you.
Additionally, because our next meeting will be after, we have from the 18th to the 24th, and Rich is here, we'll use him as a representative of DPW. We'll have National DPW. And I would also like to give them a round of applause. They've really done a phenomenal job. Some would argue all of their staff at times. You know, I think every resident is appreciative of all of our work. So thank you. Next up, we are going to start here at Borough Club. This is exciting. And Boy Scout Troop 125 collaborating on birdhouses and part of the bird sanctuary. So Nancy's here. Come on up, Nancy, if anyone wants to join you.
Hi, everybody. So I am the president of the Garden Public Area, but I'm also the chair of the Bird Sanctuary Committee here in town. This is my friend George, representing Troop 125, which is the Church of the Nativity. And we're here tonight because we started a project which began in January with the application for a grant to the Borough Society, which we did receive. And part of the planning for the planting and the restoration of the bird sanctuary, we were told by the Borough Society that we need bird houses. So Troop 125 is going to build bird houses for us. And we have a former member who passed away, and her family has agreed to subsidize the project. So many now bird houses will, with your permission, go up in the Hardy Bird Sanctuary. And on September 27th, which is National Public Land Day, the troop would like to come into the park and do some work to get it ready for the plantings, which the DPW is going to help us with. So we're here tonight to ask your permission and we'll continue support. Georgia, and you want to come? I'm really. Really today, it was really kind of coming, so go ahead.
Thank you both for being here, and thank you for your interest in doing this project, the Borough Ferry, and the part of the Borough Sanctuary. It sounds pretty awesome. Does anyone here have any questions?
One, very excited. If you need any help, you let me know. Two, how many birdhouses are going in? 20. Amazing. And do you have a lot of hands to help you put them together?
Yeah, the moderator.
But you feel good that you have enough support to get it together and obviously work with DPW to get it put into the Borough Sanctuary. Awesome. Great job.
Mayor, can I also say thanks to DPW because they are instrumental in making sure that we're essentially trees that were at risk of being taken down and it would save the birds that really put up their birdhouses. So, thank you.
I just want to acknowledge what we want, thank you, George, but also special thanks to our terrific police and fabulous garden club, I must say. This is a phenomenal group, and I recognize also our president and our vice president for here tonight. And I just say,
Thank you. And I want to add this little footnote, because the project was not a project, it was a stalled vision of what could happen at the Hardy Bird Sanctuary until the past year with the help of all of you people. And it's really a wonderful thing. And speaking to the safety issue, we've had ideas lined up for people to go in, but really it wasn't safe until now. And we really appreciate the work and the cooperation from the town.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to say thank you. I think this is an amazing project. Couple of thoughts and questions. One, take pictures and please send them to the borough along with communications, and we'd love to kind of, give some promotion to this once they're up and going, and we'd love to see the progress along the way. Do they stay this color, like they stay kind of neutral color, or do they get painted?
They're not going to get painted, and they're going to be specially made to attract different types of birds. They'll be able to be opened up so they can be cleaned out like is appropriate. So it will all be done with the oversight of John and Kathy Henry from the Church of Native, who are avid birders and great help with the project.
So they'll help clean them out when they need to be.
Okay,
Terrific. Well, thank you guys. This is great.
thank you. And I have to add one more thing. This is a garden club only thing. We have our plant sale, which is always wonderfully supported. But I sent an email to Chris Short on a Saturday morning because we had a disaster with tents. And I had the police department and DPW there in 15 minutes on a Saturday morning, helping us with the crisis. And that doesn't happen everywhere. Thank you, George. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to?
I'll make a motion.
All second, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Very good. I also want to point out specifically the garden club, thank you for all the plans you do around town. Specifically, I just noticed that there are plants around where the park is well filled and they look lovely. So thank you very much. I did forget to point out during the Borough, if you get a chance, like, I think we might get out of here a little bit on the other side. I should say, but if you get a chance, well, we finished a lot of work. Oh, I'm sorry. So if you get a chance, we have a new bathroom, the Bicentennial Hall, and also if you go on the outside, you see a lot of the work that was completed, and it really came out beautifully. So I think the next step, not getting the weeds there though, is to address some of the painting on the outside as well, which we're excited for. But another successful project. Good job, everyone. Next up, we have a proposed amendment to the vacant property ordinance. So just my quick thoughts on this. I don't know how we've already got the language into ordinance here, because we haven't really workshopped it yet. However, I think most of the ideas that were put in were based on what was provided to us by Councilman Cole. She'd like to discuss some bullet points for our consideration, and then if it was a majority that felt we should move forward here, then we would, introduce at a following meeting, correct?
Thank you. Just to remind everyone, just a few meetings ago, under the Borough, we touched on, the idea of enhancing our enforcement team's ability to, maintain public safety in any, vacant buildings. And I referenced an example that I remember from my previous work, and asked for council support to do research with our municipal attorney and staff. And, this is great, the municipal attorney was good enough to send a sample ordinance from Montclair. This triggered an initial use review, and Allison very quickly pointed out to us that we have a similar ordinance already on the books, and that is a registry mechanism, which allows our enforcement team and our administrative offices to identify buildings that are indeed vacant. And I let them know that they need to get on the registry, file their fees, and then submit to additional inspections for public safety. So after that helpful reminder, because it was just recently in 2023, I did the homework and looked at the potential additions that might help us make this the kind of tool we needed to be for our special case. Particularly like our business district, to get the kind of support it needs so that we can limit the kind of vacancies that we know are kind of a chronic issue in our business district, and it's really hurting that, just a little bit there. And so we posed 3 questions after discussion with the mayor. Those 3 questions, which I'll summarize briefly, one of which we can do, 2 of which seem to be just fine. The 2 which are just fine is to include language to address interior inspections, not just exterior, and to include language to address partial vacancy, not just total walking off vacancy. The one question we had about escalating these fees year over year, which would seem like a good idea, but it's not a good law. This is different than a fine, this is a fee, it's an administrative registry, thus keeping track of vacant properties so that fire marshal and enforcement officers can have a clear view of which properties are vacant, so that we can have trouble with everything from vandalism to unanticipated fires or God forbid anything. And we haven't identified any hazards in that structure. Our firefighters have been going in there, and frankly, we wouldn't even know what they're entering, right? We don't know if their floorboards failing, we don't know if other structural problems, or ceiling problem. So in a nutshell, and I don't know how we got this either, but I know that Christina out of the editor's office is good enough to brought it up. So to me, I'll send it over to our attorney to review what has been prepared for us.
Yeah, and I believe Christina's on today.
Okay.
Hi, I am here. There's just somewhat of an echo based on the room that you're in, so I'm trying my best to hear.
So Christina, we're looking at what the major updates were done to the draft ordinance from 2023 to 2025 to the present date, and the reasons why we included them in this draft ordinance.
Okay, so you want me to go through like a high level overview of what the revisions are?
Yes.
Okay, so in the definition section, there is expanded and clarified definitions for abandoned real property versus abandoned property. And then there is an additional definition for partially vacant or abandoned. So it's incorporated in the definition of vacant and abandoned. And then there's a separate definition for vacant property. Moving forward from the definitions, the scope of the regulation has now been expanded to be applicable to both the interior and exterior vacant and abandoned properties where currently it's just the exterior. Along those same lines, there's an additional requirement that creditors provide access to the interior of vacant properties to ensure that there's compliance with the municipal code. The registration timeframe to file a registration statement has been enlarged from 30 days. It was previously 10 days following the filing of a foreclosure or a status change. And then going back to the creditor's responsibilities, they're now expanded responsibility to maintain both the interior and the exterior of the properties, and an additional requirement that broken windows be repaired promptly. And if any of them are boarded up, that they are repaired within 45 days, unless there's special circumstances where they get approval from the fire chief or other enforcement officials.
Christina, hold on one second, it's Andrew. The reason that this creditor responsibility was included and why it's so important is we've dealt with numerous issues in the borough whereby people, a lot of finger pointing. And it's usually when there's either a foreclosure or there's a sheriff's sale or something of that nature where a property is turned over, or it's not turned over, it goes to a bidding process. And the creditor, the bank that forecloses upon the property on the debtor, takes ownership. And why this is so important is that, one, it leads to, as Councilwoman Cole alluded to, is 30 to 35% of all fires in a municipality are linked to vacant or partially vacant properties, abandoned properties. In this borough, we've had issues with regards to infestation, that being rat infestation and vermin and other animals that have taken lodging in these vacant and abandoned properties. So it's important from that perspective that we hold the creditors responsible too, because a lot of times when we have difficulty in, Chris can chime in, but we dealt with this situation very recently where we had to go after the foreclosing bank and they were all pointing fingers. And we brought one person to court and that person hired a lawyer and they said, no, it's the creditor's responsibility, and that would be the foreclosing bank. And so it was just a passing of the baton from back and forth. And here, this will now provide a pathway for enforcement and to make sure that the creditors know that if they're going to do business, within this municipality, that they're going to be held responsible for anything that is related to that property. It's very important, from a safety and a health perspective, as well as, just it's a blight on the neighborhood. We don't want these properties and no one to be responsible for even something as simple as grass cutting. We don't want high weeds. Everyone takes pride in their properties here. We just had the garden club and, we put all this effort into a bird sanctuary. Well, let's make sure that people, take pride in the property, that they have some sort of responsibility. So,
Right.
Christina,
Right. And so in addition to the initial and the annual certification, any interim recertifications where the registration information has changed is the responsibility of the creditor to notify the borough and file an amended registration statement within 30 days. So that puts the onus on them, as changes are made when it's not one of those times for the annual. And then the last addition is that the borough officials that are going to be enforcing this ordinance create and maintain an abandoned property list. That way they have a survey of, which properties are and continue to be abandoned or vacant.
Thank you, Christina, thank you. So I have one question, I think it's my own question. Is there, what recourse do we have if there is a property that has been identified and been notified that they have to give the registry? What if they don't? What's the recourse? Do we?
are you looking at as far as the penalty and fines?
So I didn't see, and maybe it's here, and I just didn't see it, but I didn't see a direct penalty for non-compliance compliance with this ordinance? There's reference to talking about, certain things, but I think it has more to do with foreclosure and it has more to do with, property maintenance. But, we're going to the first one, but if they fail to get on the registry, then they're notified that they have to. What's our recourse? What can we do? Cite them?
Is it with regards to register? It's the violations and penalties section, letter C.
Under the old code, it was 14-12.8.
Okay.
So it's C, you said?
So do you see 12.8C?
Is attached to the property of the lien? Would you have a property tax?
Fine, 2,000.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Brian.
Will it be, would the fee be attached to the property, like a lien, additional lien?
Oh, any sort of property maintenance violation, you know, if you're assessed that violation and you accrue that violation, you know, the borough could enforce it against the property. But here it would be against most likely an LLC, or it would be against an individual.
The deed holder probably at that point.
What'd you say, Christina?
I said yes, but we can include other parts of our code have a provision where we do say that in the event that there is a violation that goes addressed, we can, you know, take steps to file a lien against the property. So that is an option also, I think.
Right now, it would just be assessed to the LLC or the individual that has the ownership interest. But this is why we're workshopping it, so, you know.
Right. I mean, I think it would have to be, you could either do whoever the deed holder is, but in this case, it's a foreclosure, so it's likely the creditor. So, you know, the bank, whoever has the possession, because these are vacant and abandoned properties, so no one's really living there. It's just who has possession, if, you know, who has control at that time.
My instinct is better to have it be attached to the property. Lien liability companies by definition lien liable. But I prefer to legal. You guys think it's
So that's something we can look into. Absolutely.
Can I get a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I'll say it first. I have a question. We're talking about vacant or abandoned buildings. How would you, I'm confused about, it sounds like we're talking about property maintenance, interior and exterior. But what if the property is vacant, I mean, it's vacant?
Well, they would just have to go on the registration list.
They would.
Absolutely.
Regardless of the condition of the property, because there are conditions that exist, that criteria that are listed here. But regardless of the condition of the property, if it's vacant, they go on the registry.
Absolutely.
And also there.
Go ahead, Christina.
The revised ordinance that's being workshopped today, that's part of the clarification that is made in the definition section. There's a fleshed out definition for vacant and abandoned, and then there's also a new definition for just vacant. And so the definition of vacant is where it's an unimproved lot or parcel of property that's not being currently used. So the definition of vacant and abandoned has more of a laundry list of requirements that need to be met for it to meet that criteria. So just because no one's living there for a month would not, you know, classify the house as vacant.
But Christina, on that point though, right, the intent of this ordinance, like Betsy was saying, is vacant and foreclosed. If there's a property management issue, wouldn't that be governed by the separate ordinance for property management? There's a whole separate ordinance that gets into how you're supposed to take care of properties, whether business or whatnot. So wouldn't we want to ensure that the intent of this is focused on vacant and foreclosed, and then from the property management is deferred to that ordinance? Because we're getting, it's enmeshing a little bit.
Well, they do
I had a difficult time hearing the end of that, but I can definitely conflict check this with the property management part of the code to make sure that it's in line.
The goal is to create an inventory list of these properties, so we know who to contact if there's a fire, there's a break-in, or, I'm not saying this has been done in the past, but if there's kids partying in a vacant house, they know it's vacant. These are things that we want to monitor. We want it for health, safety, and to know what's going on in our municipality, because there's people that need to be contacted at certain times in order to their interest. And if we don't have a list and it just goes from LLC to LLC and no one's registering it, well, this will provide us with a mechanism in order to get in contact with these individuals.
I'm 100% behind it, 100% supportive. Just want my perspective is that the intent of this is going to be supported and facilitated by our overall property management ordinance guidelines, right? So I'm good with talking to pieces of that, but I don't want this to lend confusion to what our overall property management standards.
So we can reference the property management code in this ordinance.
Absolutely.
It's a question for Nancy, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot. The last, I have three things, this one. The last thing says, no less than 20% of any money collected by the borough pursuant to this section shall be utilized by the borough for municipal code enforcement purposes. Are we, and forgive me, but are we allowed to say that revenue generated from this ordinance at 20% of it has to go towards the line item in the budget? I don't need an answer right now, but I think we should look at that just to make sure it's fully aligned. And this is old language from the previous one. Yeah. So I just want to highlight that.
So it's basically saying it has to go forward.
But I don't know allowed
But any,
My understanding,
yeah, my understanding, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is revenue is revenue, fees are revenue. Unless you're gonna put it into a trust, you can't say where it goes.
Correct.
It's
So,
revenue.
and that's why I don't think this can be in
Yeah.
here. That's all I was just highlighting because I think it's kind of. The other two items that I have is the second to last page where it talks about the tasks, provide such duly appointed representatives. What is legal's opinion as far as what is operational management versus what should be in an ordinance, right? So I think we're the duty of administrative enforcement provisions, code enforcement, and then the other such duly appointed representatives are hereby directed to identify abandoned properties in the borough, place their properties on the abandoned property list established. Like, I know the intent of this is to establish a list. Is there too much of an operational overreach of saying this? Like, it's just a question to
Well, one, you have to inform of the person that is going to effectuate the code, right? That's one thing, is designate that individual.
100%.
So that's what, you're talking about 14-12.7?
Yeah.
I don't see an overreach. It's basically designating that individual who's going to carry out the tasks and the code, and that's who is designated.
So
But by the borough, I don't see where the overreach would be.
It's not so much.
What was the question, Andrew?
If there was any overreach, 14-12.7.
With regard to the code enforcement officer?
Yeah.
Where I'm coming at is not with, it's, what we've done previously is we made reference to state statutes and as the state changed. Right? So it's saying on an abandoned property list established as provided in X, right?
Right.
And so what I don't want to happen is this gets tucked away in the book and the state statute changes. Maybe it's no longer a list, maybe it's entered into a portal, maybe it's something else, right? There's an operational task enmeshed in the state statute. And what we've done before in the past is we made reference to compliance with the state statute, which we know
Okay.
lists.
So you don't like
We can clarify
the
that.
specific phrase, carry out such other tasks as are required to effectuate.
Yeah,
Is that the other tasks, carry out such other tasks? Is that what you don't love?
Yeah, I mean, that's a state statute, right? In there, NJSA 55/1953.
Yes.
State statute trumps local ordinances,
Right.
right? So as long as the duly appointed code enforcement officer ensures that we comply with that state statute or any other state statute that may come down the line, this ordinance will survive the changes.
I mean, I think by, qualifying it at the end by saying as provided by law would, be the necessary language, but it's something that, carrying out such other tasks, if that's concerning, we can certainly look into that.
I defer to you, and I just want to make sure, like, I hate
understand.
ordinances that we, and then the last piece is, and again, I love this, I'm in full support of it, is can we define further, maybe I couldn't hear because it's a little echo, the property is not legally occupied, and the property is not legally reoccupied because of the two following. So I understand the B, right, because it has A through O, and it has the two of them. But what does it mean to be legally occupied? And I don't want to call out a specific business right now in my head that I can see, but like, how do you define it?
They're paying the mortgage.
Like,
Basically,
if it's livable, if it's habitable.
Well, so
Legally occupied by definition is someone that's allowed to be living in the property, right? I guess we don't have COs here, do we?
Yeah, that's true.
So that could be an issue.
can I give you an example? You know how, like, if I was going to live in a different state, I'd have to live there for 181 days to make it deem my residence, right?
Right.
So as legally occupied means that somebody has to be present in the building X amount of time. Because like the one place that made TikTok news, right, that's been the way it is for 11 years, that made names, I have never seen anybody in there.
But then they pay a mortgage.
And they
So
pay a
that's
mortgage.
why I don't think they
Their
would
taxes
qualify.
are
Stay away from the individual.
Again, but, so the theory is, if there, say, is a storefront, that nothing's been in there, or nothing's in there currently, hypothetically,
Right.
but they're paying a mortgage, that doesn't count as vacant.
Yeah, that's the way I read it.
Right.
I think we would have to clarify that, but it would be our position when we are just drafting, this draft ordinance, was that, and we have to look into this, Christina, is the operation of a
Okay, I
business.
just want to note that this part of the definition that's up for discussion, the vacant and abandonment definition, the part that we're talking about is directly from the statute that defines abandoned properties.
So therefore, building, even if there's no occupied tenant, as long as they're paying the mortgage, they don't count as vacant.
Pay their mortgage, pay their taxes, and keep
Yes,
the property.
so
Yes.
I agree. The triggering event for me has nothing to do with whether it's vacant or abandoned. It's if they're in default on the mortgage or foreclosure or tax lien sale. That's in 14-12-2. And so you could be vacant if you're current on your mortgage. You're not on the list. And is that, I'm not taking a position here, I'm just trying to understand. Is that what it says?
I understand. I understand the concern, and that'll be something that we'll discuss.
And then the second question, is it possible to, if you think of it in Venn diagrams, right, they're going to overlap heavily, but not perfectly. Is there a way to capture the vacant or abandoned property that is not in foreclosure, is not a default?
Yeah.
I think that's the sliver that we're.
I think so, yes. So
Understood the task
that's
at
not
hand.
being adopted here, which I think is part of why we're talking about.
Understood.
I love the idea of vacant properties that are in foreclosure, or abandoned, or,
Yeah.
we don't agree with all the stuff that we're doing. I think perception initially was to catch more than what it says.
You're getting to the operation.
So there's a little more being involved there in that town. Well, I'm gonna make sure so.
Yes.
Okay,
You got that, correct?
understood. Yes.
I just want to clarify something, going back to my original question about if there's a failure to register your property, although a borough official has told you to. In 14-12.8, paragraph C, where it says violation of the requirements to register property pursuant to this section is subject to a fine not to exceed $2,000. It says it shall commence on the day, after a 10-day period.
That has to be changed to the
That
30-day
needs to be
period.
changed to 30.
Yes,
So then the here window is the same as all the other.
right, exactly.
And look, it says shall continue to accrue. And by accrue, what specifically are we getting?
The fines,
I know.
The fines can continue to accrue.
Is there a percentage tacked onto it?
no, it would just be a continuing, whether we do it as a daily or as
So
a,
every day.
you can do that, you can do that every day, if you'd
And
like,
you can be fined $2,000.
yes.
They can find $2,000 a day.
That's what I just asked.
They
I mean, we
could.
should clarify though, because I think that that's part of the current ordinance, and I think that
No.
what it means to say is that on an annual basis, because the annual registration is required, that it will continue to accrue.
Two different infractions there. There's one that's 2,000, looks like a loan on 2,000.
To get on the registry.
And then there's one, depending on whether you're foreclosure or not, it's either $1,500 or $2,500 debt. Correct? If you're in foreclosure, it's fine.
That's correct.
On that note, I think we have some, even if someone is in foreclosure.
Right.
And they can afford it, or if they were to have $2,000 a day fee.
That's it.
Well, all you have to do is get it on the registry. It says that $2,000, the fine, which is different than the fee. $2,000 fine is if you fail to register your property.
Totally, yeah, I hear that.
Well, all they have to do is register their property.
If they're in foreclosure, the debtor is bad. No?
Yes,
It's not the person that's.
It's called short sale. Called short sale, we're having to foreclose and the person's trying to sell. And things get lost in the mail, things happen, like,
no, it'd only come into account when there'd be it was foreclosed upon.
so it's only.
Because a short sale is just an approval, it's just an agreement between the bank and the individual that owns the property, to sell it at a loss.
So when a house forecloses and then the bank owns it,
Yes,
we're saying we're gonna fine the
the
bank
bank,
$2,000 a day.
yes.
We think is there any case study in New Jersey that suggests that the bank is gonna follow through and actually provide that payment if they're not on the list?
Well, they're
I'm trying to
gonna,
think of-
obviously they will fight it because that's just the nature of the beast, but 1,000% the bank will be held responsible.
And all they have to do is register the property, and then they don't get fined.
Right.
It's a compliance.
They deal with this all over the place, and it's REO properties that are owned by banks across the country, and they have to register their properties.
I get it. My reason for saying it is we create an ordinance, especially with our residences. We have so many different mechanisms to educate, to give warnings and whatnot. And this, because it's a business that is vacant, we're going the entire other district and say, hey, if you're not on the list, foreclosed or not, we're gonna charge you $2,000 a day. I just think those are polar opposites of how we're treating residents versus treating the businesses.
31 days though? Yeah, and not 30 days. Sure.
I get it, but I'm just thinking through how we approach residents and businesses in here. And we've had the same philosophy on the commercial, right? Like,
To your point though, how do you guarantee that we would have gotten one? Even to start
Well,
with?
that comes into legal process and what constitutes service, absolutely. Because you have to have, every property would have to have whether it's an LLC or a bank, you have to have a registered agent that, allows them to receive service and process.
So, Andrew, before that, going back to what Andrew said, he didn't, maybe we're being a little bit more onerous on the business end and the residential end. Is there a mechanism for it to be up?
Yeah, they can appeal from the municipal court when they get their fines.
I agree with you. Sorry.
Under 1412.7, enforcement officers, The representatives are directed to identify abandoned properties. What about, are we saying enforcement officers empowered for vacant properties?
She should put both words.
Mm-hmm. She's like, so just.
Where it says just an abandoned property vacant as well? Yes, I'm sorry.
It does say that vacant property is abandoned property.
Oh, that's true. You're right.
One is both.
Yeah, the definition does say it is.
Right, but we can always clarify that. Can't hurt.
Two things.
Can I just bring something to the governing body's attention really quickly? So going back to the violations and penalties, if you look at 14-12.8B, there is language there that's this is part of the current ordinance, and it says that it's a $2,500 fine for each day of the violation, and that's different from C. So I just want to confirm that the
So that's
consensus is
right.
to change C to daily fines.
You see where it says just $2,000 accruing, and B says $2,500 for each day.
Because currently the ordinance requires annual registrations. So I think that when this was originally done, C was intended to be an annual fine. We can change it. I just want to know what the consensus of the governing body is.
Christina, can you create like a table like we did in the tree ordinance that shows like
Sure.
the situation of what the fee is? That'd be much easier to digest, because I'm also seeing the $1,500.
Yeah, I agree. I could do that.
I have two things. I agree with Drew that 1,500 a day seems pretty steep to me. I feel much more comfortable with per month. Right? I agree with the general thrust of what we're trying to do. 1,500 a day feels like a fast ramp to me. Second thing is.
But just so we increase the notice period and the ability to cure that default from 10 to 30 days. So are you saying if and remember, the only way that they can get daily fines, well, I guess, no, in this situation, it would be strict liability. They either registered or they didn't. But, so essentially they violate, you give them a citation, and then 30 days later, you see if they did it again to see if they issue another citation? Is that where you're?
To me, it feels like if you're talking about 60 days total, right?
Well, no, because the ordinance would have to clarify. So if you're looking to do it on a monthly basis, it would be 30 days, notice of violation goes out on May 12th. June 12th, they still didn't register the property. We then issue them a violation, a complaint, a municipal court complaint. You're then saying if they don't give them another month, so until July 12th, if they don't do it then to issue another violation?
No, so what I'm saying is, if someone's not responding after 30 days, something might be wrong, right? Something might be hospital, it might be that nothing's wrong. And what I'm saying is, once the clock or the meter starts going, I wouldn't mind having it go at a slower pace than every day. So if you kick in whenever, kick after 30 days, but maybe it's a fine maybe it's 5,000 a month. But something, to me, it just like in sort of equitable fairness, a slower meter.
May I ask you a clarifying question? Are you talking about the 1,500 a day, 100 a day in RFA? So, it's my understanding that $1,500 a day in paragraph A is not a failure to register, it is violation of property maintenance code, fair maintenance period, this means, that are related to our property maintenance code. So if they sit on a fester for 31 days and still haven't cured it, then there's a $1,500 fine. Is, right, but am I correct that this is regarding property maintenance, not a failure?
It's 12.6A,
Yes,
which is, right, the notice of violation references. And what Chris York is bringing up is a correct point. is that in order to be assessed that daily fine, you would have to write, that code enforcement officer would have to write a ticket each and every day. Because the law is for municipal court complaints is that they have to be factually accurate on its face, which means on the ticket. So you can't just assume that, if you write a ticket, like I said, June 12th, and you go to court, say, July 12th, well, it doesn't accrue every single day. You have to write a ticket for every single day.
And is that discretionary?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it is, okay.
We have many ordinances and statutes within this town that are not enforced.
So it's not on.
So it's on them to determine whether they give some sort of leniency. And obviously, if it's an egregious, situation, and it really impacts the health and safety of our, borough, then maybe they're out there and being more aggressive within, but if, and I understand, like, you don't want to be too harsh on people, but if someone ignores a legal notice every day, then that's on them.
But then,
you have to.
But then approach it that way, right? I don't want to get in the business of writing ordinances where we lean on discretion as a means of justifying our right?
There's only so much we can do from the dais. Yeah, a lot of the stuff happens in the exit. But I think your point is we should standardize the process. And not what we can do.
Each day of violation. Instead of each day of the violation.
If the point is to have the flexibility to provide that discretion, right? Put it back on the code enforcement officer to be able to issue additional summonses, right? Based on you're saying it's based on the discretion. If it's based on the discretion.
The problem is we can't put that language in there that it's the discretion of code enforcement officer, because then they would just fight that as unconstitutional anytime that, why did you give him a violation and not me a violation?
So wouldn't they be able to fight this as unconstitutional? If we just said it's at the discretion.
They could have forgot, they could have,
So we just change it from each day of the violation to each day of violation is written.
Yeah.
That's a good.
Christina, did you hear that?
I didn't hear that, sorry.
It would be, instead of just saying each day, we could just say each day that a violation is issued.
Okay, so basically like subject to ongoing violations as they occur. Okay. But it's,
Yes.
and then it's gonna be, whenever the code enforcement or whoever's enforcing it issues the violation.
Correct.
And is that for just see if they fail to register, or do you want to carry that over to the failure to register an in-state agent? As that's B.
And it's, I just want to clarify.
Because most banks are gonna be out of state.
And I'm not speaking for the police officers that are in the room, but I am sitting next to two of them. It's always the jurisdiction. You get pulled over for a ticket, it's the discretion of the officer to issue the ticket. It's in every type of enforcement action, it is up to the discretion of whether it's a code enforcement officer, any sort of law enforcement officer.
So then you want me to change shall to may? So may be subject to a fine each day instead of shall be?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Does that work? I'm saying,
Yeah,
I'm not good.
that's next to better.
Yeah.
We could put it as may.
I think that I like in this is nights or weekends and holidays, right? You can't register property, so there would be extra fines. That seems fair to me. The second thing is the list on page 2. Some of it seems subjective. Things on here. I would encourage you or have you talk about saying who does it determine whether criteria is met with the enforcement officer. I would like it to be spelled out. Who's defining all that?
Where the list.
A through O.
Okay.
That somebody in the preceding B, property is not legally right.
preoccupied because of at least two of the following as determined by code enforcement officer or whatever, somebody, so it's not ambiguous about who is it decides. Did you hear all that?
So 14-2.2.
Of B, overgrown or active vegetation.
That's a function of our first.
Yes, I just wanted to say that they decide if the lawn is overgrown or impacted.
I can answer that real quick. So generally when you do any type of, when you're doing policy, doing warrants, you have a definition section. So the definition section generally does spell out the function of how the ordinance is carried out. That's the definition, which defines what the conditions are. So for that section there, which is 14-12.2, which talks about definitions, conditions, and determination, what it's doing is defining what all of those are. So generally you do the definitions first before then you would follow up. So you wouldn't talk about what the enforcement mechanism would be. You're defining what conditions would fall as a violation of the ordinance first. Then you would go further on as far as how it would be carried out procedurally. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, so put it in wherever, so that it's not ambiguous about who's making the call on the level. What we thought about in advance is going to be the chief of police, the code enforcement officer, or somebody designated by the administrator.
Well, we do have that here. It says it under 14-12.7, we're talking about enforcement officers, which
That's who's designated, who can do.
Yeah, which spells out.
So your reading of this is then the code enforcement officer can determine if the property has overgrown or neglected vegetation.
Correct, because they would be the complainant on the summons. So they're the ones that determine it. So 14-12.7 enforcement officers, that determines, that spells out who can actually be enforcement.
Code enforcement officer is the enforcer of.
Correct.
Should you just say that?
It does, right, 14.
Yeah, but it's not, I'm just thinking like, rather than have it fall later, should we just say that up front? Just so we know who's on here, as opposed to trying to figure out if you're around, whatever, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, reorient. It could fall after the definitions if we wanted to reorient the structure of it. I will defer to legal for that.
Can I make a suggestion? We discussed a lot of potential changes, and we're bouncing all over the place on this. We're not taking it line by line. We're all over the place. Is there anybody, if you, Christina, can go back, put together the changes that we've suggested, and then we take a fresh look at it?
Absolutely. That's why we want to do the workshop early, because we know it's not going to just happen overnight. Yeah, absolutely. We can accompany or include the changes that were proposed. Let's put them wholesale in a new working document, and then.
Suggest that, I'm sorry, no, it's just hard to hear. I know. I suggest that, after, all these comments are, doing their homework, that there's an administrative review at Chris's office with the enforcement team, so that when they look at this, they feel it gives them line. It would be my only request from a follow-up administrator.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Andrew, do you mind, Christina, when you made the first changes, track changes, and not.
For some reason, the Zoom is skipping.
So
Now I can hear you.
Councilman LaBarbera is proposing the way that we can show the changes that were made tonight to show what was proposed by the council, mayor and council here tonight.
No, I think what you're saying is just like prior when we review the ordinance, when we see old ordinances, whatever.
Well, that.
Structure, no, here we have an old definition and, so like abandoned real property, abandoned property. So rather,
No.
right,
But those are additions.
Was it?
Whatever is in there.
whatever the chief
And then we'll strike
struck through, I think what you're saying.
No. So Andrew, if I could just clarify. Christina, can you hear me?
Yes. I can hear you, but it's hard to hear with the way that the room is set up when more than one person talks, so it like glitches.
So Christina, remember when we had the tree ordinance, or it was the brush and leaf ordinance, and we did Microsoft Word track changes?
Yeah, I could do in track changes.
Perfect. I don't want to use the ordinance etiquette, which is strike through in bold, and lose
Okay, so
track
you
of the changes.
okay. I understand what you're saying. So I'll just do the changes in track changes and then I'll put it in ordinance form after we go through it.
Correct.
Before we move on here, I know that this is a plan already in here, but I just want to clarify. It's just because you get to letter H under 1412.2, that doesn't automatically mean that there's an issue. In other words, just because a neighbor says there's an issue, or a delivery person says there's an issue, doesn't mean there's an issue. And I think I'm basing that based on things that have happened historically within our governing body, recent, and, time ago. We gotta be a little bit careful there because, there's situations, like I can put together here, you can put together B and H, and quite truthfully, that might just be someone that's snowboarding down in Florida for the winter. So it needs to be at the end of the day, the discretion of the code enforcement officer based on these items. It can't just be a neighbor said something, so they're getting something. And I think it is that way, but I want to make sure the language is.
Understood.
Okay.
Yeah.
We good on this?
Great first pass, really. This is a hard one to crack. Great job.
Thank you. We are moving along. Next up is public comment on agenda items only. Please observe a 3-minute time limit. Please stand and identify yourself by clearly stating your name and address to the record. Anyone with a? No?
Anybody want to read?
Allison?
We have 8 people, but no hands up.
All right. So the summer meetings have begun. We have our approval minutes for April 28, 2025. Got a motion to approve as motion.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Cole.
Yes.
Demaseli.
Yes.
Hoey.
Yes.
Koch.
Yes.
Barbarera.
Affirmative.
Olson.
Beautiful. Next up, old business hearing and adoption of ordinances. First one up is 2025-06, amended bond orders 2022-10 for 21 Fairview Road. Do I have a motion to open? Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Does anyone up here have anything on this?
Man, it's just 20-day estoppel, is it?
Is there anyone in the public that has any comments on this? Allison?
No one with their hand up.
Do I have a motion to close? Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Do I have a motion to approve as presented?
Motion.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Cole.
Yes.
Demaseli.
Yes.
Hoey.
Yes.
Koch.
Yes.
Barbarera.
Affirmative.
Olson.
Yes. Thank you. Next up is 2025-07, the Russian leaf ordinance. Do I have a motion to open? Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Is there anyone up here that has anything on this? No? Anyone in the public? Allison?
No, sir.
Do I have a motion to close?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Do I have a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Cole.
Yes.
Demaseli.
Affirmative.
Hoey.
Yes.
Koch.
Yes.
Barbarera.
Affirmative.
Olson.
Yes. Thank you. We have introduction of ordinance 2025-08, amendment code 2-27.17B, exemption from fees. Before I ask the motion, anyone have any on this?
Quick summary there.
This is just adding our volunteer fire first aid auxiliary are entitled to exemption of fees if they're in good standing. We get a list every year of who's in good standing for the prior year. So we're just adding zoning permits. It was thought that it falls under building, but they're separate, so we're just adding that the zoning permit fee would be, they would be exempt from that.
So,
Is it?
okay,
We're
good.
good? We're good. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Cole,
Yes.
Demaseli, Hoey,
Yes.
Hodge,
Yes.
La Barbera,
Affirmative.
Olson.
Yes. Thank you. Next up, 2025-09 special emergency appropriation for master plan preparation. Does anyone have anything on this?
Well done to all board members.
A motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Cole,
Yes.
Demaseli,
Yes.
Hoey,
Yes.
Hodge,
Yes.
La Barbera,
Affirmative.
Olson.
Yes. Thank you. Consent agenda resolutions 2025 149 through 2025-158. Before I ask for a motion, does anyone want to separate anything on here? Does anyone have any comments on anything on here? Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Cole,
Yes.
Demaseli,
Yes.
Hoey, Hodge,
Yes.
La Barbera,
Affirmative.
Olson.
Yes. Okay, Department reports, March 2025, Police Department, April 2025, Municipal Clerk, and dog license. I'm going to bring a, you're welcome, if someone has a motion to accept it, thank you.
Motion with a thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? No? All right. And next up, in the borough, please stand and identify yourself by clearly stating your name and address for the record. Please observe time of 3 minutes. Anyone in the borough? No? Allison?
No one with their hand up.
All right. So we're going to move for adjournment. We don't have to exec session, do we?
No, we do not.
Yeah.